Hey guys, Chris from Drift Outfitters here with you today, and what I want to talk to you about is attaching wire to a shank of some sort for a trailing hook system, usually used for salmon or steelhead fly. You could use this for trout flies as well, though, if you wanted to, or whatever you can come up with. What I have in the vise here, this is a 25mm Sanyo's articulated steelhead shank. This will work for Waddingtons, it'll work for cut shanks like the OPST shanks, whatever you like. It's sort of the same process. This is my favorite shank, just for the reason that this back loop here is on a vertical axis as opposed to the horizontal one that we see here up at the eye. Waddingtons, if you look at them, will have this on the same plane, and the reason for that is Waddingtons were originally invented for a different purpose, but it makes the mounting of the wire, I find, just a little trickier to keep straight. This is a really smart system for keeping a nice straight wire loop at the back. Now, what I'm going to tie on here, I should get some thread on there actually before I advance. So this is an 8/0 Vivus thread. I'll just take a few wraps rearward and then back forward to cinch up that return eye there. And what I'm going to tie in for our trailing wire here, this is a Sanyo's intruder wire in the larger size. You want about 5, maybe 6 inches of this stuff to be on the more comfortable side. You can always trim it back a little afterwards if need be. And what I like to do when I'm actually setting these up is I'll rig these with the hook on to start with, just so I can more easily sort of visualize what this setup is going to look like and how far back my hook is going to ride. So to do that, this is an OPST swing hook. I'm just going to thread my wire up through the bottom of the eye, make a quick wrap around the shank here, and I'm going to thread that wire back through the eye so it comes out the same way that it went in. And pull it through like so. So now my wire is looped around the shank of the hook, as you can see. Now I don't need to pull that up all the way, but I'll snug it up a little bit here. Try and, what I didn't do actually here is get my tag ends to be about the same length. I'll see why in a second. So it doesn't have to be exact, but the ends should line up roughly. I'll just pull this through close to being tight. Okay, so my hook is rigged up. It's not perfect, but that's fine. This is a rough visual. I'm just going to set this hook back about as far as I want it to sit on this fly. So this isn't going to be a massive fly that I'm tying, so I'm not going to set it too far back, but you can adjust this to your liking. What's important here is that you see I've got one strand of wire on either side of this shank. And it's important to keep these straight because that will determine the orientation of the hook back here. If this gets twisted, the hook will sit on angles. So you want to try and keep it on a horizontal plane, and that'll keep the hook vertical one way or the other, depending on how you thread it on. So I've got this set back a couple inches. I'm just going to put a couple wraps over top of this now. Snug that up. Take wraps forward. That should be in there pretty well at this point. I'm going to pop this hook off. You can tie your fly with the hook on if you really want to, but fair warning, you will probably stab yourself at some point. Just pop that off, back it out the same way it went on. Now I know I have a good length for my trailing wire there. If you feel confident just tying this straight in, go for it. Don't bother throwing the hook on. Now, what I like to do at this point is, actually, to begin, should have covered this up. I recommend you do that just slightly. But I'm going to pull these tag ends of wire up toward the top of the shank at this point. So you can see I've brought those up to the top of the shank. I'm going to keep carrying thread forward. I'm trying to keep these strands of wire side by side, not overlapping. That'll help keep them straight. If they do overlap, that twist, depending on the fly and how many thread wraps you put on top afterwards, how solid it is, it may actually find its way back, end up twisting your wire. Probably not, but there is that risk. Now, at this point, frankly, this wire is in pretty solidly. You could maybe even cut the wire here, but just for peace of mind, I definitely recommend you take your wire strands and just thread them back down through the eye. It's a nice thing about having an up eye here. And then what I do is I invert the shank I fold them back along the underside here. Do this both at the same time or one at a time. And I'm tying them back down along the underside, so they're doubled back. Now for this part, you'll want a pair of side cutters, something you don't mind beating up with the wire. Don't use your scissors for this. And I'm just going to cut them, not super short, but short of the length of the shank. And I'm just going to keep taking my thread wraps rearward and cover those up. Now, if you're really scared about this thing pulling out, you can put super glue or head cement or wherever you like on there. It's really not needed. This is crazy strong as is. I've never had one pull out, knock on wood, but you know, whatever makes you feel confident about this, go for it. You're going to be putting so many wraps of thread on top of this, tying the rest of your fly. That thing is not budging. Yeah, that is as simple as it is to attach trailing loop of wire for a trailing hook for a steelhead fly.